Well, good morning. It's a delight to be here and to have the opportunity to talk to you this morning about the work Fonterra is doing to try and create practical, profitable solutions to reduce greenhouse gas for New Zealand dairy farmers. For those that are not familiar with Fonterra, we're a dairy cooperative owned by 10,000 New Zealand dairy farmers. We're the 6th largest dairy company in the world, exporting to 130 countries and responsible for around 25% of New Zealand exports. Now, we've recently completed an exercise where we've looked at where we want to be in 2030 and beyond, what we call our long-term aspiration. And underpinning that are 3 strategic pillars: to focus on New Zealand milk, to be a leader in sustainability, and to be a leader in dairy innovation and science. And what I'll talk to you about today requires an integrated approach across all 3 of those pillars. And if we're successful, that will help New Zealand achieve its greenhouse gas targets and its obligations, such as to the UN under the Paris Agreement, by reducing Fonterra's already world-leading greenhouse gas footprint. And the reason for that is when you look at emissions in New Zealand, about half of those emissions come from agriculture. And Fonterra is responsible for about 20% of those emissions. But that's not because we're inefficient. It's because we've got a small, relatively low level of industrialization here in New Zealand, small population, not a lot of other industry, and we export the majority of that milk to those 130 markets I just referred to. And in fact, the footprint of Fonterra's milk in New Zealand at less than 1 kilogram of CO2 equivalent per litre of milk is about a third of the global average footprint. And where that footprint comes from is around 90% of that footprint is created before the milk leaves the farm gate. About 9% in manufacturing and about 1% in distributing what is currently around 1,500 different dairy products to our customers around the world. And those customers, which are some of the biggest food companies in the world, such as Nestle, are looking to Fonterra for ongoing reductions in our greenhouse gas footprint. And this is an important point. The reason we are putting so much effort into these technology developments around greenhouse gas is not only to help New Zealand achieve its targets, but also to help our customers achieve theirs. And you can clearly see from the charts here why methane is such an important target for those reductions, being around 50% of the total footprint. Now, if you capture all the methane produced by all the cows during a year, you could fill 8,000 Graf Zeppelins. That's one of the biggest balloons ever built. But the reality is, it comes from a highly diffuse and distributed source, and only goes up at 1 party balloon per hour from each cow. And in fact, the 250 grams or so of methane that New Zealand dairy cows produce each day, comes out in small bursts of around 1/1000th of a gram, about 30 times a minute. And that 250 grams in total at current carbon prices, if you convert that to carbon, so you take your methane, multiply it by 27, so you're around 7 kgs of CO2 equivalent, is worth around 50 cents per cow per day. And it's a very, very challenging problem to solve in the New Zealand environment, given our pasture-based system. But with this in mind, we've developed a framework for how we look at how solutions need to fit within the New Zealand context.
Solutions need to get the tick in 4 key areas, or what we call our good 4s. Solutions must be good for the cow in terms of her health, reproduction, and milk production. Solutions need to be good for the milk, resulting in a safe product with at least equivalent nutrient content and no chemical residues. Solutions need to be good for the farmer, are practical and preferably easy to implement and support profitable milk production and the nutrition this provides. And of course, solutions need to be good for the planet and can reliably reduce methane when used in a particular farming system. Finally, solutions must be scalable so they can be used with millions of animals, not just thousands. We are looking at a wide range of solutions and products to see how they fit these criteria.
So in terms of those Good4s and scalability, it's not a case of just having one or the other. You need all of them for these to be viable, practical, profitable solutions for New Zealand dairy farmers. And we've looked at a very wide range of solutions within this framework. We've looked at synthetic compounds, so chemically synthesized agents. Examples there would be Bovaer, one of the most studied methane inhibitors from Royal DSM. Natural extracts, such as the use of seaweed as an inhibitor. There are many, many others. The use of Fonterra's extensive probiotics and cultures collection under a program we call Cow Butcher. Some of you may have heard a little bit about that, and I'll talk briefly about that in a second. Forage species, really attractive because obviously in a forage-based system, if you can find forage species that will reduce the emissions, that has a natural fit with what we do in New Zealand. And we've been looking at things like plantain in that space. Land and soil treatments, we've been looking at a number of treatments there, and in fact that's taught us a lot about one of those Good4s, the fact that the milk composition needs to be clean and residue-free, and those residues are internationally accepted, etc. So there I'm referencing back to the DCD issue, something that was there to reduce both nitrates and nitrous oxide, but had some significant market repercussions for New Zealand, even though it's probably safer than table salt on a consumption basis. Effluent management, even though effluent in general in New Zealand isn't a large share of our emissions in New Zealand, because most effluent is aerobically destroyed on our paddocks rather than anaerobically in ponds, which is an issue for some of the offshore systems. Very, very exciting areas of young stock or vaccines. Why? Because this may enable us to do something once or in a limited way over a limited time in order to get the impacts. And similarly, breeding. You may not get the biggest effects, but they're permanent, passed on to the next generation, and they accumulate. And finally, and I'll talk a little bit more about this one as well, post-emissions destruction. So can we destroy the methane after it's been produced rather than prevent it from being produced in the first place? Now, I'm pretty sure that there won't be a silver bullet. In fact, I think the only solution at the moment is more like a lead bullet, and we don't really want to go there. Because our nutrition that we produce in New Zealand is important and is at world-leading levels. But we will probably need a combination of solutions in order to make progress. So I think a key message which I want to leave with you, I don't think this is an either-or or a particular solution is all we'll need. Solutions that might be the early solutions that we can put in place may be replaced by better solutions later on. In fact, one would hope so. Solutions that we put in place may be stackable or complementary, if you want, to other solutions that we can add later. This is going to be a key feature, I think, of making progress. The other thing that we're about to do is massively step up our investment in trying to get to solutions across all of these different areas. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I'll just talk a bit about two areas that are really attractive as perhaps some initial solutions from the Good4s perspective. This early life programming and post-emissions destruction. So why early life? Well, as I said, if you could do it over a limited time and influence the lifetime production of methane from animals, that has a real appeal. And particularly as it is a time in the New Zealand dairy industry during calf raising where the calves are actually concentrated in one place and fed a particular diet. So calf rearing, if you could influence that rearing is a good target for methane reduction if you could come up with a way of doing that. And that might sound far-fetched, but we know from a lot of work that, for example, probiotics, of which we're very, very good at producing them for human applications, influences gut development in a quite marked way. Not only does it influence gut development, but we've done experiments in humans where infants that were highly susceptible to getting eczema were fed probiotics early on in life. In fact, we fed them to the mothers before those infants were born, and then the infants for about the next 18 months. Then we stopped. And those infants grew into children, into young adults, and we've been monitoring those. It was a study we did in Wellington for well over a decade or more, and we've had a very significant reduction in eczema compared to the siblings who didn't get the treatment. So we know we can get these long-term effects. We also did in the course of an experiment where we were looking at pigs, we found that some of the treatments that we gave to pigs, trying to look at immune stimulation, actually reduced methanogens. So we thought, hang on a minute, could that work? Pigs are monogastrics, they've got a digestive system very much like humans, but could that work in ruminants? Did some initial trials, quite promising. We've seen around 20% reductions, but the challenge here is it's notoriously difficult to get consistent and reproducible results from this type of approach, and we've got an extensive program of work underway to try and do that. Post-emissions destruction is really appealing because you don't have to interfere with the cow's biology. You won't get residues in the products. The testing's a lot easier. You can do the initial testing with gas cylinders. You don't actually need animals, etc. We've got 3 approaches in this area, and for confidentiality, I can't talk about them because they are in partnership with commercial companies. But essentially, they're about building devices that can either combust or convert that methane to CO2. And when it's CO2, the carbon in methane is biogenic, so it has no net global warming effect. It's part of the carbon cycle. So we're trying to do that. Again, some promising results, but obviously the challenge there is getting devices to work on animals. We've done a lot outside of technology development around strategy, around measurement technology, because if you can't count it, it won't count. And if it's going to count, it needs to count on a global basis. Imagine the chaos if different companies, different countries did this in a different way. So that's been a heavy focus. Another one's been on infrastructure. And that is a critical element of where we need to step up, build additional infrastructure here in New Zealand if we're going to be able to step up our investments, which we are just about to do. So we just, earlier this year, together with the government, joined a new JV with other agribusinesses that will initially invest over the first 4 years of the program $172 million and has the potential to reach 34,000 New Zealand farms. Really exciting, but is going to require that infrastructure. And finally, overcoming this challenge of methane is not going to be easy. We're trying to overcome millions of years of evolution. But I'm optimistic that with the right approach, the right partnerships, and the right investments, we can make significant progress. Thank you very much.